And we're live. Welcome back, folks. Episode number 5 of Sunday Satoshi Live. Back with regular guest Bitcoin Ben. How we doing, Ben?
Doing really well. Good to be here. How are you, brother?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm excited about today's show. We're going to be talking about Fiat, and we're going to be talking about Bitcoin. We're going to be talking about Fiat regulations. We're going to be talking about how banks are putting up roadblocks to people accessing exchanges and Bitcoin. We're going to talk about fiat problems and how Bitcoin fixes those problems in large part.
Cool. Yeah,
let's get started.
Let's get into it.
Let's get straight into it. Block number 779,470. Let's go ahead and take a simultaneous sip and get straight into this Sunday Satoshi. Cheers. All right. So we're getting fancy, folks. We got fancy background. We got a better camera angle. We've been working on improving little by little each week that we're doing this. We're also going to come at you with some memes because you know memes make dreams come true. So got to have the memes because that's kind of the forefront of the information war. If you can't have fun with what you're doing, it's not worth doing. And we are out here fighting for freedom money, fighting for freedom of speech, freedom of expression. Bitcoin is speech. And this is one reason that it can't really be banned because it's native money to the internet. It's code. It's ones and zeros. And so it's really important to plant your flag and learn more about Bitcoin because Bitcoin is free speech. It is freedom money for the future. And I think we're facing either a future where we embrace things like freedom of speech and freedom to transact without the government kind of controlling everything that we do. It's either that or we're facing CBDCs like we've discussed in previous episodes. And I think it's a really important line that we need to draw and say, like, look, people deserve the right to use Bitcoin. They deserve the right to use technology for the people. I digress. What do you think, Ben?
Well, I think that Bitcoin, is exciting, groundbreaking, earth-shaking, world-changing potential technology if enough of us humans choose to accept it, and I think enough people already have. But we'd like to continue to spread the good news and maybe help as much of this troubled world, have some sound finances as possible.
What I think is cool is how what I think is cool is how people have access to Bitcoin. And no matter where you are in the world, you should be able to accumulate a position in Bitcoin, hopefully. And the cool thing is that the people can take a position in Bitcoin and stack sats with humble means, so to say, whether you're in the third world or the first world. And
right.
and you can front run the banks. You can front run BlackRock. You can front run JP Morgan because the big money isn't in Bitcoin yet. Bitcoin is less than $500 billion asset. And when it comes to the use case of what Bitcoin is, it can replace things like gold. Gold is like a $13 trillion asset. Mm-hmm. Gold is layer one money for the fiat standard, basically, because the central banks hold gold.
Right. I forgot what podcast or show it was, but somebody mentioned something. They were like, China and Russia are stockpiling gold, and then somebody else on the show was like, well, that's because gold doesn't matter anymore, and currencies haven't been tied to gold for decades and decades around the world. So, that's not necessarily, earth-shaking strategy or, something. I think it's a good strategy. I think the United States would be wise to, have solid assets all around. But, obviously the people in charge have their own, petty, selfish concerns, whatever. And most of it doesn't have anything to do with helping people or the economy.
Yeah. And I mean, I was very much an adamant gold bug, who I particularly like silver, physical silver.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you knew me, for most of the time that you've known me, Ben. I was on the gold bug train, or this, stacking physical silver.
Right.
And that's why, as soon as I read the Bitcoin standard, it was actually pretty easy for me to take the next logical step into Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is digital gold. It has all the same kind of traits and properties as that.
Yeah, and then some.
And then some, exactly right. So the only thing it doesn't have is the history, right? I mean, gold's got thousands of years on it.
Right.
And Bitcoin's got 14 years in operation. But the thing is that gold's got the Lindy effect of being around forever, right? And that makes it anti-fragile. And that makes it like, it's practically 0% chance that you wake up tomorrow and gold is without value. It's been used to store value for hundreds and thousands of years.
Right.
I'll bring up a cool little chart that we can talk about real quick that just kind of compares. And this is I'm pulling this from Fidelity's Bitcoin First paper.
Oh yeah, I remember reading that. That's a good one.
It's a real good one. I definitely recommend people do that. What's up, Tatum? Turn up in the comments. Appreciate you coming on the show a week ago. And and he recommends the 7th property. That's definitely another one on my reading list, Tatum. Appreciate you dropping that comment. So on this comparison chart, like, it compares gold, Bitcoin, and fiat currency. And one of the most important aspects of money is scarcity.
Mm-hmm.
Gold and Bitcoin both have that. Bitcoin is even more scarce than gold because you cannot create more than 21 million Bitcoins. Whereas with gold, there's plenty of gold yet to be mined. And if the price of gold doubled, there would be a lot of new gold production by gold miners. If the price of gold doubled, a lot of gold miners would come online very quickly with the quickness.
Right.
That's not the case with Bitcoin. It doesn't matter how many miners come online. The inflation schedule is certain, and there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. And shout out JP Morgan Chase's CEO, Jamie Dimon, who doesn't even understand that.
You would think that a CEO of a bank, if they're going to come out and comment, would try to have a basic understanding of what they're commenting on.
Indeed. But the banks hate Bitcoin, and that's we're going to get to these articles where they're starting to restrict the ability to the on-ramps and off-ramps more and more. We're starting to see the writing on the wall where banks are starting to restrict the access to exchanges. They're using things like FTX and all the chaos that's been going on in the markets to, of course, bring in regulation and whatnot, and start to steer the narrative towards orange coin bad, and they're starting to, of course, say that crypto in general bad, including Bitcoin, which I think any educated person looks at Bitcoin as they look at it separately from crypto in general. It's just not the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, but don't worry. The banks are certainly just trying to protect us from making unsound investments with our, you know, with our
Of
feeble
course.
little normal minds.
Of course. I'm sure it's entirely benevolent. I'm sure they're doing it entirely out of the interest of their own customers.
Right.
So,
But yeah, that is crazy. I was wondering when I first read that article, I was thinking like, how can they, people don't buy Bitcoin and keep Bitcoin in banks, so how are they stopping people? But then it said stopping credit and debit transactions, I guess, and
well, banks,
that
I think banks like
that's
Fidelity,
not
for
really stopping
example,
people.
banks like Fidelity are putting out excellent research. They're realizing, like, if you look at Fidelity Digital Assets, I mean, you read their paper and they're very transparent about how they think Bitcoin is clearly a game changer and something that can't be ignored.
Right.
And then you've got other banks like JP Morgan Chase, where Jamie Dimon doesn't understand Bitcoin's inflation schedule, doesn't understand that there will only be 21 million Bitcoin. And he was, I read reportedly that he was firing people if they were trading Bitcoin that were working for his bank. So the thing is if you can't beat it, join it. I mean, we're seeing some banks embrace Bitcoin, like we're going to read in this article with the bank from Gibraltar, that is facilitating Lightning transactions, and they're also offering custody solutions, which have their own risks involved anytime you're trusting someone else to custody your Bitcoin, not your keys, not your coins. So, but some banks are starting to embrace it and come out with products that are Bitcoin friendly. Other banks, not so much. They're starting to ban it. If you look at, the other article that we're going to get to, which is the HSBC, and nationwide, particularly in the UK, they're starting to restrict deposits into Binance and the like. So it's an interesting point in time where we're starting to see different approaches to this elephant in the room, which is that there now is competition on the scene for money, and we didn't have that before. I mean, gold, it's the 21st century, and gold, it's something that was hard for me to kind of admit. It was a tough pill for me to swallow as someone who appreciates the value of gold. That, are we really going to go back to a gold standard, and is that even possible? And how would the information age, the age of the internet, how does gold fit in to that? I think it's a really interesting kind of thing to consider. Like if it's not gold, then what is it, right? Fiat money, we know there's problems with fiat money. Right. And so, like, I could go on and on about that.
Of course. Yeah, I don't think I don't think there's any returning to the gold standard without some kind of earth-shaking reset, and not the kind that Klaus Schwab is angling for.
Yeah, so what does that look like? I mean, like we have touched on in previous Sunday Satoshis, the top priority, if you read the World Economic Forum's own publications, the top priority is getting CBDCs to work interoperably with different central banks. And they keep using that very interesting language, which is that they need to stay ahead of the technology. And I think that they are behind the curve insofar as I think the Bitcoin adoption rate number go up. And I think that that's one of the most encouraging metrics, way more encouraging than price. Yeah, price goes up and down as such, but what's more encouraging is adoption, that people are learning about this technology, and the people that learn about Bitcoin are becoming price agnostic, which means they're just stacking and they're just accumulating because they're looking at the big picture.
Right. the price affects me somewhere in my feels, but ultimately it does not affect my my strategy or my confidence in the technology.
And that's what clicked with me for coming from a gold bug background. What clicked for me is that I'm approaching things from first principles. I'm approaching Bitcoin with the same first principles as I approached gold and silver.
Mm-hmm.
It's scarce, it's verifiable. Bitcoin's more portable. Like all the same reasons. It's divisible, durable, fungible, portable, hyper portable. Really, Bitcoin's hyper portable, and the verifiability. It's more easily verifiable. Bitcoin is verifiable with no expenditure of energy. It takes no energy to verify Bitcoin, whereas it's not very easy to verify precious metals. So like literally it was just one logical step further from gold and silver that brought me to Bitcoin.
Right. Also, speaking of price, we've talked about how gold and silver prices are manipulated, and I don't think the price of Bitcoin can necessarily be manipulated quite as easily because they're not trading freaking futures and commodities and all kinds of craziness on it, but we're still valuing the quote price of Bitcoin in fiat dollars or money, and as we know that's just built on a house of cards that's bound to trip and fall constantly and ultimately.
Yeah. And there, of course, as soon as Wall Street gets a taste of a commodity, as soon as it gets listed on the CME and it starts getting traded in futures and derivatives, of course, it's going to be people trying to make fiat from it, right? And this is the advantage.
Mm-hmm.
This is the advantage of people that are the people that are long-term, they have a long time horizon, they have a low time preference, and they see value. They're able to accumulate value. Those people have the upper hand on the people that are just trying to make fiat.
Right.
I'm going to bring up this this interesting case here, which is the Department of Justice. To my knowledge, this is the largest settlement ever in a criminal case and this was against JP Morgan Chase, one of the biggest banks in the world,
mm-hmm.
commercial banks that is, and they agreed to pay $920 million in connection with schemes to defraud precious metals and U.S. Treasuries markets. These people were committing crimes. These people they're still doing it, I think. I mean, I think it's pretty clear when you look at the precious metals market. They're still spoofing the markets. They're still rinsing and repeating and washing out speculators with just frankly fraudulent futures trading on the CME, and they're selling metals that they don't have, and that welcome to the COMEX basically. They're able to leverage and sell precious metals which would not be allowed in any other commodity. But here's proof positive that there's criminal activity happening, and why is it happening? I'm not sure. If I can say for sure why it's happening, but some might say that they need to keep metals prices down for political reasons and otherwise, like so we maintain the facade that there's not trouble with inflation and the economy. So banks have been very interested in suppressing precious metals pricing. Now, here's an interesting thing to consider. Now, let's bring it back to Bitcoin, if you don't mind.
Gunning at the competition.
Well, there you go, and that's the thing. And I have a question for you. Is gold and silver actually able to be money in the information age of the internet? Like, I think not. But at the same time, I think it's worth noting that clearly they don't want competition. And
Right.
and there was an interesting quote in The Bullish Case for Bitcoin, which was it's a fantastic book.
Mm-hmm.
There's an interesting quote from the Wall Street Journal.
Looks like a small book.
Yeah, it's great. You should definitely read it. So there's an interesting quote that talks about how Bitcoin threatens U.S. monetary policy, and they say that I'll just read the whole thing. There is another danger, perhaps even more serious from the point of view of the central banks and regulators. Bitcoin might not crash. If the speculative fervor in the cryptocurrency is merely the precursor to it being widely used as an alternative to the dollar, it will threaten the central bank's monopoly on money. Clearly, that's of concern. And I think that that's why they're trying to roll out CBDCs as fast as they are. I think the writing's on the wall. And clearly, when they're saying that it's their top priority, I believe them. There's a lot of things I don't believe that they say and they put out in their publications. But I do believe when they say that CBDCs are their top priority, I believe them.
Yeah. Yeah, their top priority is finding a way to make sure that they can maintain their, their control over the monetary system.
Yeah, again, like I quoted the last time, Lord Rothschild said, "Give me control over a nation's money supply, and I care not who writes their laws."
Yes, nice.
So let's get to these articles, my friend.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's start with the Xapo Bank becoming the first bank to offer Bitcoin Lightning payments. Pretty cool to see. I guess it's cool to see some friendliness towards Bitcoin within the fiat banking, but at the same time, I think you gotta take it with a lot of grains of salt, which is, again, when banks are offering custody solutions. As BTC Sessions, Ben, when I spoke with him at the Pacific Bitcoin Conference, he was warning of the dangers, because basically banks are offering custodied solutions, and it's really important to custody your own Bitcoin and know how to do that responsibly. So, I asked him, I'm like, I'm like, hey, do you think that's ever not going to be the case? And he said, no. He's like, I basically always think that you're going to have to take responsibility over your own money. And I agree with him. I mean, there's always a catch.
Right. Maybe this kind of technology and these banks might offer solutions that make life easier and more convenient, but don't trust them with your HODL pile.
Yeah, and it's so early days. Like it'll be really interesting to see where things are at over a long time horizon.
Certainly. And
so they're going to be offering yield on their Bitcoin, which I think, again, that's dangerous, folks. That's dangerous, especially if you haven't learned your lessons.
I don't understand how they can do that, I guess.
Right. And like the old timers say, if you can't understand something, a buck is involved. So especially when it comes to your money, you should understand what's going on with your money, and why would you sell? Like, why would you sell or trust someone with your Bitcoin? That doesn't seem to make sense.
The whole purpose of Bitcoin is not doing that.
Word. But if people want to use, like you said, I mean, if you're going to keep your main stack, shouldn't like be on an exchange, and yet at the same time, if you look at like Strike, or if you look at Cash App, you know, you can transact in Bitcoin using those payment solutions, and obviously you shouldn't have your whole stack on Cash App.
Right.
So this is so cool because like the fixed payment fee for you using this bank's Lightning payment solution is 15 sats, which is negligible. It's basically nothing in fiat terms.
Yeah. That's
and
awesome.
I was just explaining before we started this show, like Ben, I was explaining to Ben, and we were talking about what Lightning is. And it's so cool. And it's so efficient. You know, like Bitcoin's ability to settle on layer 1 and then also have Lightning as layer 2 is unbelievably efficient. It works, and it's super cool how, like, you know, you have final settlement on layer 1 and it takes block confirmations, but on Lightning you have instant settlement. It's an amazing thing that completely changes the game.
Yeah, in the current market conditions, this is like layer 2 is what's going to allow, you know, widespread Bitcoin adoption at like the everyday transaction level. You know, like I'm just buying some gas here, I'm just buying a meal here, stuff like that.
Hell yeah, it's something to get excited about. So we don't let me forget to cover some metrics on mining and stuff like that. I want to get to that as well.
Also, what's 15 sats in dollars?
Less than a penny.
Nice.
It's a fraction of a penny.
For up to $100 transactions. That's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, and we've seen transactions moving on chain on layer 1 where, you know, people are moving $50 million and paying pennies, literally pennies, to move that much value. Bitcoin is value. It is value, full stop. I can just stop there. Bitcoin is value, and it's value moving technology. It's value storage. It's money.
It's like a better gold combined with you know, technology that allows for, you know, global near instantaneous transfers.
Word.
Nice.
Word up.
So Gibraltar, is that like in Spain or Morocco or something?
It's a good question. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I should have known you were going to ask me that, but Gibraltar is a part of the UK, is it not?
I don't know. I know that the Strait of Gibraltar is, you know, where the Mediterranean meets the Atlantic Ocean.
It's a British overseas territory, so I wasn't wrong on that.
Nice.
And I spelled it wrong.
Why are all the tax havens in British islands?
I mean, there's a reason that they were an empire for hundreds of years.
Uh-huh.
Right, they know how to handle their business. Gibraltar.
I'm just looking it up on Google Maps right now.
I got you.
Gibraltar, Michigan.
So let's talk about HSBC nationwide. We already covered the fact that they are stopping people from moving a certain amount of value onto certain exchanges like Binance. So they're limiting it to £5,000 in some cases. They are completely stopping people from using credit products like credit cards to purchase crypto. And yeah, I mean, Bitcoin Magazine ended this very short article by saying that, you know, it highlights the need for more decentralized peer-to-peer exchanges that can facilitate non-KYC transactions. Yeah, I mean,
non-KYC, that means like the untransferred Bitcoin.
So non-KYC being like you're not having to go through the draconian banking, know your customer stuff.
Oh, right.
In order to transact on basically like the onboard and the off ramp, the on ramp and the off ramp. Like that's how banks can squeeze money that's flowing into Bitcoin and the exchanges. And of course they're saying, look at how FTX has gone down, and look at how Luna Terra, and look at all this fallout, and look at how people are losing money. Look at how Celsius and Gemini and all the rest are locking people's money up. Well, and they're saying, well, we need to stop that, and they're restricting people's ability to move money in and out because most of it's moving through banks, and the banks can see these transactions going from their balance sheet onto or to the exchanges.
Right.
So
I wonder
vulnerability.
I wonder how the government and some of these banks that seem concerned about the risk that some of their customers might be taking by making their own decisions. I wonder how they treat people who are doing like actual gambling and just jerking their money towards casinos and things like that at an uncontrolled rate.
Yeah, I mean, and you could argue that the exchanges are casinos in large part with the crypto trading, and
sure.
all the rug pulls and all the altcoins that do end up just being rug pulls. I mean, if it looks like a casino and it smells like cheap cigarette smoke and if it looks like a casino and it smells like a casino and you've got clowns like SBF running it, then it probably is a shady casino.
Right.
And in his case, it appears to be even worse than just a casino. It appears to be criminal money laundering, and it appears to be just outright theft and fraud.
Right. We'll have to have a whole show one day when SBF is back in the news for something and just deep dive all the dirt there.
Yeah, we might need to schedule a whole day for that.
That would be interesting. But yeah, I just had a thought about Bitcoin and shitcoins, being together on exchanges. I feel like maybe at some points, maybe that's been good for Bitcoin to present it to much wider audiences. I'm sure it's good that freaking UFC 285 last night, where tens if not more millions of people around the world were watching. They got crypto.com all over, and anybody who goes on there, I'm sure they're seeing Bitcoin as one of the top assets. So I'm sure that's good for name recognition and adoption and getting people interested that otherwise might not be. But at the same time, it's lumping Bitcoin with these altcoins that are not the same, but treating them the same. And people need to educate themselves and understand that. And I guess that's where people like us will hopefully be able to reach and transfer some wisdom to people that are interested.
For sure. I think that's a fair assessment of the situation. The unfortunate reality is that a lot of people get burned before they learn about Bitcoin and the value of Bitcoin, and that you shouldn't gamble with pristine money.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of stupid to gamble when you can just stay humble and stack sats.
Right. It's a low time preference technology. It's not designed for your your, day trading speculation or whatever you got going on.
Yeah, exactly. And yet, good things can come from bad experiences, I suppose. But it also scares people and causes people to not, it causes people to avoid Bitcoin because they do associate it with shit coins and the gambling type of behavior, and also the unregulated, fraudulent behavior on the exchanges that are dealing in unregistered securities.
Yeah, for a while I thought that I was going to be, Mr. Day Trader Genius, get rich quick or something like that. And I was like, I'm just going to set all these notifications on my Coinbase app, and, I'll just be watching it all the time. And anytime it drops, more than 5%, I'm going to buy some. Anytime it goes up more than 5%, I'm going to sell some. And, I think I thought about that and maybe messed around with that for a number of days. And then I was just like, this is stupid. This is way too much time. And I'm not actually making any money. I'm basically just like making Coinbase money on fees and breaking even and wasting time. This is silly. So,
yeah, for sure.
But you can invest in the technology. You can, share some orange pills and sit on your HODL and watch the world become a better place because of it.
Exactly. And we definitely got orange pills for people. That's what we're here for. And it can be kind of a boring message, but I think that even though it's boring to stack sats, stay humble and learn more about Bitcoin and take responsibility for your own business, take responsibility for your own money, even though that's a simple and boring message, I think that it pays off in the long run.
Right. Yeah. Everybody's always, attracted by the shiny, exciting, like, ooh, look at this. I have something to show you. It's a technology or a business model that nobody else is doing yet. And you can do it. If you click on my video and buy my course, you can get that really going for you, and you can do nothing and make a bunch of money. And obviously those are pretty much all scams, of course. But yeah, a lot of people don't have the attention span or the interest to learn about the fundamentals, let's talk about some philosophical basics of
it's really shocking.
What is money and what's the history of money.
It really is shocking.
Yeah, you'd think that we need to know definitions of things. We need to understand the
seriously,
the blocks that we're building things out of. What are those blocks?
How come you don't learn in school, public or private? How come they don't really teach you about what is money?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how come they don't teach you about the traits of money?
You're lucky if they ever say the word budget or make you make a little fake budget or something like that. Most schools won't even start talking about it. The best you get is like some math questions that just use money as an idea, but don't actually do anything but use it as an example.
Yeah.
No education.
There's so much to unpack there as well. Like, there's tons of people in academia that are advocating for outright socialism and complaining about the problems of society. And yet you don't hear them complain about central banking, which is bringing about much of these problems. And like, you'd think that would be an important thing to talk about is these people, there's lots of complaints about capitalism, but we never really hear about central banking as maybe being a source of some of those problems.
Right. Yeah, I think that I feel like Occupy Wall Street, whenever it was, like freaking 15 years ago or something, was like a a turning point for the Democratic Party where they kind of dropped their integrity on the, financial and corporate side of things, and somehow got infiltrated and distracted by all the race baiting, intersectional crazy people. So
you mentioned Occupy Wall Street as being a pivotal moment in history. Let's lead into if you want to comment on that, go ahead. But then let's lead into this article about the Canadian protests.
Sure, yeah, that's a good segue, I reckon. But yeah, I mean, it seems like, typically, me kind of learning things about politics, around during Obama's first term and things like that, when I was kind of becoming an adult and, late high school, early adult years. I remember, the Democrats seemed like they were always the party that was, questioning the banks, questioning the corporations, saying you can't trust big pharma, all these things. And somehow all those things that were, worthy things to draw attention to just kind of seem to have been forgotten about by the left and the Democrats, and picked up strangely by the Republicans, who, used to be thought of as the, big corporate fat cat people that get all the corporate money. But
to be fair, though,
things have twisted a little bit.
To be fair, though, it does seem like we have kind of a one-party system where neither party is really questioning central banking.
Yeah.
And I mean, really, you only heard that from kind of fringe candidates like Ron Paul. And, those coming from the Austrian School of Economics, who are, again, they're talking about gold and the like. But it's a one-party system, and you don't hear much criticism of central banking, and that's I think that's a problem. Like,
yeah, I guess it's worth drawing the differentiation between, the conservative Republican maybe voting base in the country, or the, thought among the constituents, versus the actual, language of the politicians. The politicians seem to know, they can say some things, but they better not say them too much, and they better not actually do them. And
yeah, exactly. And yeah, certainly people are starting to notice that inflation is getting out of hand, out of control. Politicians are just giving it lip service, but they can't really do anything about it. I mean, all the Federal Reserve can do is print more money. Everybody knows that a pivot's coming. Wall Street is betting on the Federal Reserve eventually pivoting and lowering rates, and even recommencing quantitative easing, which is just a fancy word for money printing.
Right.
Everyone knows it. And it's a joke, and it's kabuki theater, like just thinking that the Federal Reserve is going to actually, how shall I say, actually solve for inflation. Like, they're a one trick pony. All they can do is print money.
Right. And printing money does one thing, which is, devalue your currency.
So let's switch over to the Canadian situation. This is an old article, folks, but I think it's worth talking about, just because we're discussing how banks are restricting outflows of fiat into exchanges and into things like Bitcoin. And some banks are also starting to come up with products that embrace it. It'll be interesting to see which way things go. Generally, are banks going to just cut off fiat on ramps and off ramps to and from exchanges, or are some banks going to embrace it? In Canada, where the truckers were protesting against the Trudeau administration, the Trudeau regime, they just started turning people's bank accounts off. So here's an old Zero Hedge article from summer of last year, where some banks are apologizing for turning off or freezing people's bank accounts and access to their money. They said, sorry, we were pressured to do so by the government under the Emergencies Act, which Trudeau has moved to make a permanent fixture in their law enforcement capabilities. So, similar to how a lot of the KYC stuff came in under anti-terrorist laws, where now banks need to know everything when you move money. A lot of that came in under 9/11 Patriot Act laws. A lot of the banking regulations were brought in under the Patriot Act. So similarly, Canada has moved to make the ability for banks to freeze people's bank accounts without any trial or really much due process at all. Very little, if any, probable cause. The government has pressured banks to freeze people's accounts, and with no oversight, no checks and balances. The government just has the ability to freeze people's bank accounts, and they want to make that a permanent fixture in their abilities to do that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, sounds kind of like, classic, what you'd call like Hitler, like coming to power. I'm declaring myself chancellor just because, I need to help protect the people. So, therefore I will, relinquish the old standards, and I must acquire more power to protect our nation. But, yeah, I think it's really concerning. And it's also interesting that the banks themselves seem to be like, it seems that like they were uncomfortable doing this, and they were basically forced to by the government, of course. And I think it's interesting. Like, it almost makes it seem like the government is like brokers for the interests of corporations against each other, more so than protecting people, because the whole reason the protest happened is because of a vaccine mandate. And, all they have to do is not push that, and there would be no protests, and there'd be no need to do anything to anybody's money. So
I hear you, man. It's concerning, to say the least, and the power for the government to just simply deperson you, literally restrict access to your money. They've got an example of where a single mother who's making minimum wage, her bank account was frozen for donating $50 to the truckers when it was 100% legal, according to MP Mark Strahl. He tweeted that this single mom who works a minimum wage job, her bank account was frozen for donating $50 to the convoy. But at the end of the day, it's just unbelievably concerning that you've got these measures. Just the fact that they have the power to actually freeze your account, because your money in your bank account is permissioned money where you need the bank's permission to use it. So is it really your money if the bank or the government or some employee of the bank who goes AWOL and doesn't like you or whatever it is? The point is you need their permission to use your own money. So the question becomes, is it really your own money?
Right. And it also is scary, like, when you think about the actual, like, there's an individual in the government, in the bank. If anything happens, it's going to be a couple of individuals that were unelected, that are potentially anonymous and, immune to any consequences. these individuals are going to be the ones making the decisions, pressing the buttons to freeze or take your money. And, we should not be trusting individuals, which is really the problem with big government, is that government's just made up of people, and people are flawed. And the more power you give somebody, the more potential for corruption there is.
Word.
And it's just very concerning. But Canada's got all kinds of crazy problems. America does too, but they seem to be I don't know, very very strange dystopian state there.
Yeah, there's so much that I'd like to say, but since we're getting close to the hour, let's wrap it up, my friend.
Yeah, I guess I could speak really quick with an anecdote.
You got an anecdote for us? I love an anecdote. What you got?
Just, I guess that's what jogged the initial beginning of my last train of thought.
Let's end on a. Oh yeah. Let's talk about how they took your money, brother. I completely forgot. Let's talk about. So Ben actually has experience with an arbitrary. What would you say, bureaucracy just reaching in and taking his money. Like it's one thing to read it in an article and be like, oh, some truckers were causing trouble. It was a fairly peaceful protest, and then they just decided protest, and then they just decided to start freezing people's bank accounts and taking away their insurance. Just to stop a peaceful protest. But it's one thing to read about it. It's another thing to actually experience it. Ben, let's talk about your personal experience with this type of thing.
Yeah, shouldn't take too long, but basically several years ago, I registered a business name with the state of Kentucky, and I never ended up doing business with that business entity that I had created. And I moved, and I never changed my address, I guess, for that business. So the state had sent me stuff demanding that I file taxes for this business entity. And being that, no accounts were ever created with anything, there was no sales or anything at all that had happened with this business entity. I guess was not worried about it, forgot about it. And so I guess the government assumed, they're like, oh, he didn't file, and he's not responding to these letters. So we're just going to assume that he owes us money and take everything that he has. And so that seemed to be what happened. I just, was checking my bank, on my app, my balances, and I saw a little, warning thing or issue alert. And then a couple hours later, there was just all zeros in all my accounts. And several $1,000s had been just sucked away and I was just completely in the dark, did not know what or why. So I spent the next
how did that feel? Like when you first look at your account and you see this activity, what was your first feeling when you saw that?
Well, I guess it's something that kind of hits you in the gut pretty hard. You're like, what the heck is going on here? Start thinking, why is this happening? What did I do?
So then you call the bank. I assume your first call was you called them,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then what did they say? Did you have to go through 7 people who were like, oh, I don't know, that's not my job, in a bureaucracy, and you finally got someone?
I had to go through a few people, and eventually I got some lady at some office in Ohio or Cincinnati or something, and she was like, yeah, the state sent us a fax saying that we had to take your money. They're like, and so that's what we do. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's thanks for keeping me in the loop before you took my money. And so she said, you need to get the state to give us permission to give you your money back. And I was like, all right, well, that sounds like a fun experience. So
so then you had to talk to 17 people at the state to see what the hell was going on.
Then I get to talk to the actual bureaucrats, and that's a good time. And it wasn't actually as god awful painful as you might imagine or I expected necessarily. But
yeah, to be fair, Kentucky does answer the phone.
Yeah, but the fact that it happened at all is just an example of why you need to get your keys and custody your coins, and just an example of the inherent issues with the entire traditional banking system and the government being involved.
So it was all just a big misunderstanding. But
yeah,
the moral of the story is that they can just take your money arbitrarily.
Yes.
Wow.
The moral of the story. Yep. Just
wow.
Without any they may or may not have effectively communicated with you about something. They may or may not have a valid reason, but it seems like they like to err on the side of our money.
Wow.
And our money meaning the government. This is our money.
Wow. So I guess to wrap it up, I just want to say, it's just an important thing to know what money is, know the definition of what makes for a good money, and then learn about that money. And I, for one, believe that Bitcoin is the best money technology in the history of mankind. It's better than gold. It's better than silver. It's definitely better than fiat. And so, these central banks are shisty. They're printing money like no tomorrow. Yes, they're raising rates, but that's a clown show, and they're going to turn the money printers back on. So prepare accordingly. Right. And I think that there's so many reasons why this is an important discussion. I appreciate you coming on as always, Ben. Thanks for coming on yet another Sunday Satoshi. I appreciate you.
For sure, bro. It's always good talking about, relevant financial news. I feel like, we're staying on top of things, and, maybe if we get enough momentum going, we can, help educate some people and bring them along for, a less bumpy ride.
100%. I did say I was going to get to some mining metrics. Just I'll run through it real quick. Let's look at a couple funny memes and then let's sign out. Cool. So mining hash rate is above 300 exahash, still super strong. We had that massive difficulty adjustment. I'm going to go on screen real quick. Let me go on screen here. We had that massive difficulty adjustment about a week ago. We're looking at another difficulty adjustment upwards coming up soon. We are currently at, an estimated difficulty adjustment of 3.63%. So difficulty just still going up. We had that big price movement downwards, which put us at an under 7 cent per terahash hash price. So we're currently at 6.67 cents per terahash. So miners are still fighting hard for their revenue as such.
Is the current price of Bitcoin still like at 23 at the moment?
That's a good question. Let's have a quick look at price.
I'm just holding.
Yeah, does it? I mean, 1 BTC still equals 1 BTC.
Right.
Currently under 23. We had a lot of liquidations and about a $3,500 red candle. A lot of longs got liquidated above 23, and we're currently sitting at 22,437 as of block 779, 474. So,
yeah, I guess a lot of the hash power increase and difficulty adjustments upward of the last few months, that's basically a result of more mining power coming online due to increased profitability as the price jumped a few months back.
Can you say that once again for the people in the back? I'm not sure I heard your question correctly.
The price when it jumped from the 16, 17 range up to the current range back a few months ago, I was just asking whether that's the factor that has motivated the increase in hash power and therefore also the difficulty adjustment upward.
Yeah, so I mean the difficulty adjustment upward is hash power coming online.
Right.
Because basically hash power comes online and therefore difficulty adjusts because of that new hash power.
Right.
When hash power comes offline, difficulty go down, so to say. But hash power has been steadily going up. I have my dark mode on, so it's kind of hard to see. But hash power has just been steadily going up consistently. Yes, hash power does come offline, but overall, this is a terrible view because my dark mode's on. Sorry, folks.
I thought that chart looked good. I just couldn't see the labels or whatever.
Okay, if you say so. The chart looks okay. So basically,
you got a purple, gold, blue.
Yeah, let me zoom out a little bit. Basically, we've got price in purple. So you can see prices come down since that November 2021 high. And yet difficulty is blue, hash rate is yellow. As you can see, difficulty and hash rate number just go up, folks. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it came down like with the China ban. And yes, there are downward difficulty adjustments, but overall, you zoom out, hash price, excuse me, let me rephrase. Hash rate and difficulty number go up. And that's even when the price is coming down. Like, you're still seeing miners come online. You're still seeing a massive amount of hash power come online.
Yeah.
We've got all-time highs.
That's just security and investment going up as well.
Yeah, I mean, the miners are long Bitcoin, and they're, I mean, it's going to be this, like I've said this, we're about a year away from the halving. The halving is going, I mean, like, y'all need to buckle your seatbelts because things are going to get wild. Things are going to get rowdy in the space. And I'm here for it. And I'm glad you're here for it too, Ben. Thanks for joining me. And and check the links for where to follow Ben. You can follow Ben on Instagram, follow Ben on Twitter. He's on Bitcoin Twitter. Ben, we got to get you on Nostr. We were talking about Nostr last week. We need to get you on there.
I slacked. I was supposed to get on there.
Come on, man. I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for coming through.
All right. Yeah, it's been fun. You have a good week, and I'll talk to you soon, brother.
Appreciate y'all. Subscribe to the channel, and thanks for tuning in. Peace.